Hello to everybody guys, before to start this video I advise to you two YouTube pages. The first is After School. It's very amazing. They talk about environment, talk about spirituality, talk about everything to change your mindset and your lifestyle actually. And the second one is Bob Proctor. Actually he died a couple of months ago, unfortunately, rest in peace. And he was one of the pioneers of the law of attraction. So follow these two YouTube pages, amazing pages. Hello to everybody guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Dr. Ivan Hammerhead, nutritional biologist and specialized in functional medicine and anti-aging medicine. Today we talk about cortisol. Today we talk about stress. So just make it easy. What is stress? Stress is everything that modulate, alter our homeostasis, our equilibrium that we have inside. Stress is not only physical, it's not only emotive, it's not only psychological, it's everything. So everything that change our state, our physiological state, our, in this case, normal state, our base state is stressful. So physical exercise could be stressful. Make love actually is stressful. It's stressful to change job, to change home. Eating is actually stressful because if we start to a normal condition where we are not eating, we start to eat and we increase a little bit our cortisol. So everything is stressful, but of course we are interested right now to something that real harm our health, that trigger our equilibrium in a bad way, that made us prone to diseases. So cardiovascular diseases, neurological diseases, autoimmune diseases most of time, and insulin resistance, so metabolic diseases, and so on. Stress can also increase the proliferation of cancer cells. What does it mean? It means that if you have some mutation in your cells and you are chronically stressed, the proliferation of these mutated cells is faster. So maybe you will never get the cancer, but if you have stressed, you probably can get the cancer before your normal time that cancer will be developed. I'm not talking about that excess of cortisol and stress can cause you cancer, but for example, if you have this mutation in your cells and cause to environmental factors or psychological factor and I don't know, other kind of stuff, you are prone to get this cancer in 20 years. If you are chronically stressed, you will get the cancer in 5 years, in 2 years, okay? I don't know how many, but it can speed up the proliferation process and the creation of metastases and, of course, cancer. So, as I said before, stress can be physical, just like sprain, just like fractures, okay? Or also heart disease, kidney disease, etc. Or can be psychological. So for example, could be anxious behavior because you want to call your son and your son doesn't answer, or it can be because you lost a parent, or even other stuff. So you're changing your home and it's very stressful when you change home, or you change job, or your car was broken and it started to be psychological stress, psychological burden and stuff like this. But never mind which kind of stress, every time we are stressed, we have an alteration of our homeostasis, we produce ton of cortisol, adrenaline and noradrenaline. So that's it. Of course, there is something that is worse than other. So if I lost my parents, actually is of course worse than if I don't know, broke my car, okay? Actually different kind of stressors, but the problem is that it's not only the entity, so the amount and the gravity of the single event, but also the sum of all. So for example, most of times if we talk about what happened inside us, losing your dog could be the same of having different little event of stress in 1 month. For example, can happen that during 1 month you live a lot of circumstances that are very bad and stressful, and the entity of these little circumstances, of these little stresses, and these little stressors that happen in this month are the same of the loss of your dog. Okay, so for example, you do a little car crash that costs you 5,000 euro, then a thief come home and steal you all the gold that you had in your home, or maybe happen simultaneously that you lose your job or you get fired, and all this kind of stuff are very, very, very stressful, then can create the same perturbation in your physiology, in your hormonal balance, and of course can create all the perfect environment for future pathologies. Of course, it's very important of how do you perceive all that is happening to you in this moment, but we're not talking about this right now because we want to talk about what can we do to decrease the gravity of the rise and the spike of cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, and how to little by little learn to overcome this. Just get a little bit inside physiology. When we produce a ton of cortisol and adrenaline, a lot of stuff happen. First of all, your glycemic index spikes up because we want glucose for our cell metabolism, because in this condition we are stressed and we need food to overcome the stress that is present in our body, in our life actually. So glucose is high in your blood, and of course if something happens, so if you feel stress for 1 minute, it's okay, but if you are chronically stressed, it's very bad. So glycemia start to rise up. Second, your heart start to beat faster because adrenaline, and again, if it's only for 1 minute, no problem, but if it's chronic, you start to have heart disease. Then also your blood vessels start to vasoconstrict. The same, if it's for 5 minutes, no problem, but chronically, hypertension. What happened then? You produce more fibrinogen if you have a lot of adrenaline and cortisol, and you increase your probability to generate blood clot, because of course if you are stressed, probably we can get hurt and we can lose a ton of blood, and we don't want to die because we lose all our blood. So it's better to generate a more dense quality in our blood. Again, when you are high levels of cortisol chronically, you don't want your sugar in your muscle cell because you need sugar in your fat cell. When we are stressed, we don't want to use energy, we want to store energy. And most of times when we are stressed, we are not stressed because we are running, but we are actually sitting, okay? Most of the population is sitting, no physical activity, and is still eating continuously junk food. So that's a real problem. So you don't only have high glycemic index, you are also insulin resistant, so this glucose cannot go to the muscles. What happened also when you're stressed? Do you want to get a baby? Of course not. You have to think to survive right now. So you don't want testosterone, you don't want spermagenesis, you don't want it. So you can be infertile, you can be sterile for a while, low libido and erectile dysfunction and stuff like this. Chronic stress. Cortisol also is a catabolic hormone. Again, for 5 minutes, no problem. For 1 day, no problem. But for months and months, generate a bad state and catabolize your bones, so more risk of fracture. Catabolize your hair made of collagen too, so thin hair, and you start to lose it. Of course, most of times could be androgenetic alopecia, but other times could be cortisol. I'd like to go a little bit deeper about hair. Why? Because cortisol most of times can act in the same way of DHT, and actually high level of cortisol can decrease testosterone, can generate insulin resistance that actually increase the conversion of your testosterone in DHT. So most of times people with high level of cortisol have low level of testosterone and high level of dihydrotestosterone. And this can cause this kind of alopecia, androgenetic alopecia, that is very similar to stress alopecia, because you start to lose the hair here in the top of your head. So how can you block this? Of course, decreasing cortisol and checking dihydrotestosterone. Maybe not taking finasteride because you can worsen the condition when we talk about depression and anxious behavior and stuff like that. But you can find everything actually in my book about dihydrotestosterone, finasteride, and so on. So just go to buy it. And so cortisol, as you see, can do a lot of bad stuff about your health. But last but not the least, maybe the most important thing, and we can reconnecting with thymosin, one alpha video, so the one of the first video that I made, immune function. When you have high level of cortisol, at the beginning you increase your immune surveillance, your maturation of immune cells, the receptors of immune cells. But when it's chronic, you start to decrease the quantity of immune cells in the blood. You start to internalize the receptors of immune cells that recognize pathogens. You start to atrophize thymus. Your thymus start to shrink more and more and more, and you induce apoptosis in your immune cells. CD4, CD8, NK, all these cells that can protect yourself from cancer cells. So pay attention when people say, no, it's not stress dependent, it's not stress dependent. Stressors is everything, is life. EU, stress, is the positive one, but positive means nothing, because most of times positive is how do you perceive it. Because your stress can be exercise activity, actually, because I like it, because I love it, I'm motivated, I'm rewarded at the end, or because I watch myself on the mirror and I see full of muscles thanks to this physical activity. But could be also very, very, very stressful for you because you hate it. And that is this stress. Okay? So DIS, stress. A bad stress, okay? And that's about how you perceive it. Stress is life. Of course, every time we sum all these stressors, because you live in a polluted environment, and I'm talking about a lot of heavy metals, I'm talking about smog, I'm talking about acoustic pollution most of times. When you live in a bad situation with your family, because you are not in a good relationship with your husband or wife, when you don't get enough money, when you don't get good food because you don't have money, you think you don't have money to spend for the good food, okay? And if you are genetically predisposed to anxious behavior, if you are genetic predisposition to depression, etc., etc., etc. So if your lifestyle is very bad, you are stressed. And if you are stressed because of all these things, you probably 100% will live less. Respect when people is less stressed than you, or anyway perceive this kind of stress better. Respect how much do you perceive it. So of course it's very important how do you perceive your stress, but it's also important how many stressors you face during your everyday life. Of course, right now we can talk about adaptogens and what we have to do or what we can do to lower this cortisol, but in the next video maybe. Bye guys, thank you for being here.